So today we have Kate Petrie, who's going to be talking about the history of the Schoodic Education Adventure Program, which is a residential education program in the park that's been running for several years in one form or another. Kate is the education coordinator for the park, for Acadia National Park, and she got her bachelor's of Science in Recreation and Park Management at University of Maine, and then got her Master's of Education with concentration in Natural Resource and Earth Science. And she's been here at Acadia doing education stuff for a good long while. She's very, very good at what she does, and has a lot of knowledge about the history and development of education here at the park. So look forward to your talk today. Thanks a bunch, Kate.
Thank you, Abe. I'd like to check to make sure folks can hear me. You can give me a thumbs up if you can hear me well. Or put something in the chat if you can't. Great, thank you. I would like to take a little bit of time and tell you a little bit about our overarching education program, and then talk more about the residential program, the C program, Schoodic Education Adventure, so that people can understand where it fits, both in the park history, as well as the whole umbrella of offerings that we are working to produce in education. If I am sharing my screen well, you should see about half a dozen little guys doing an intertidal count of population survey. And we should be ready to go. All right. Thank you all for joining me. Today, I'd like to go over the history of Acadia's education district, the umbrella of education efforts at Acadia, a little tiny bit of history of where residential education started. It did not start at Schoodic, and the current Schoodic Education Adventure Program and its curriculum. The Schoodic Education Adventure Program is curriculum-based, residential, and experiential, all wrapped up into one. And it's for whole classes of grade 5 through 9th grade students. Teachers will sign their whole classroom up and bring them together. Now, the residential program is part of the educational continuum of field trips and classes that the park offers. These have evolved over the course of 50 years, believe it or not, with the last 30 being including residential education. I want to talk about the details of the residential program itself a little bit later, but I want to help you understand where it fits in our overall umbrella of programming. Environmental education or outdoor education, and I'm going to use those interchangeable today. I'm not going to split definitions. Provides students with opportunities to develop a sense of stewardship for parks, develop a sense of stewardship for the environment, and learning about leave no trace conservation science and protection of natural and cultural resources. National parks serve as unique outdoor classrooms for teachers to provide many opportunities for inquiry for their students. Environmental education program, as I indicated, began in the 1970s through support of the National Environmental Study Area Program, one of the early grant programs. Working with local teachers, study guides were produced for field trips to the park and made available through teacher workshops and through local schools. With minimal funding, though, the next decade saw only intermittent environmental education with local schools. As relationships developed with the local schools, in 1981, the Junior Ranger program was developed around 3rd grade curriculum to help to start filling the gap. In 1987, working with schools, the foundation was laid to reinstate environmental education programming. This led to the creation of a permanent environmental education ranger position within the Parks Interpretation Division in 1988. The first education coordinator can be seen there on the left, Carol Peterson. This began a cycle of working with teachers to develop park field trips for additional grade levels, piloting and refining those trips, and then developing teacher guides and support materials. With the help of Parks' Classrooms grants, several field trips and school outreach programs were developed through the 90s and continue to develop today through grants from the National Park Foundation. Acadia's education and youth opportunities have evolved and developed over time with a lot of forethought and planning. Planning regarding age-appropriate activities, child development levels, state education standards, and where they fit with park resources. Acadia has been really fortunate to have interested local teachers that can collaborate with us on program development and to help ensure that what we develop is a strong fit to school curriculum. While each of our field trips, school outreach programs, and even virtual programs stands on its own, they are also designed to build one upon another as children grow and become more capable of complex inquiry. Our education lineup is designed to offer each grade level, K through 8, 2 field trips a year, plus school outreach programs and virtual programming supporting that. High school education opportunities include intermittent field trips, virtual programs like career days, and offerings like earth science and physics programming that relates to park resources. High school youth are also served by introductory summer job opportunities, which take place in the park. With the help of Friends of Acadia, the park has been able to support youth education by offering internships and experiential summer jobs like the Acadia Youth Conservation Corps, AYCC. College level students also find similar opportunities with the Summit Stewards Program and the Acadia Digital Media Team, both of which are funded through FOA. They actually run those as well. Let's take a look at the whole umbrella of education opportunities in Acadia. We provide K through 12 field trips each spring and fall. The residential program is a key part of those field trips. It's a key part for 5th through 9th grade students. School outreach programming brings programs into schools. Virtual programming has a statewide and even national reach through the winter season. Conservation job experiences happen in the summer through other divisions and other districts and partners. Professional development for teachers, web resources, and fostering young teaching assistants as they develop their skills are all part of the education district's responsibilities. Just a quick recap of what I just said, a few pitches to augment it. Education field trips focus both on natural and cultural resources in the park. We have several highlighting our carriage roads, the Sur de Mont Nature Center area. We also work with partners like the Somes-Manel Wildlife Sanctuary, looking at fish migration, and have a floating water chemistry program for 7th and 8th grade in the fall. Now, residential education. In the last 20 years, we've had over 5,000 students come through just the C program. School outreach brings programs into local schools, as I said, within an hour's drive of the park. Programming focuses on career resources and resource management issues. Currently, we're focusing on things like the decline of bats, bioinventory practice, and habitat protection. Youth jobs are offered through Friends of Acadia and the park's trail maintenance team. Acadia offers 45 virtual programs geared towards kindergarten through 12th grade students, as well as lifelong learners. In 2021, the entire education district gave over 500 programs and reached almost 13,000 students. Professional development for teachers in Acadia includes single day, single topic workshops like astronomy or seashores. Summer collaborative studies that take place once a week over the course of a month or 6 weeks. And the Acadia Teacher Fellow Program, where 6 to 7 teachers from across the US get a behind the scenes conservation management and field research experience in the park. Rangers also support teacher professional development as guest speaking at local schools and working with national workshops that take place in and around the park. Due to staffing models, 80% of our teacher professional development is run by the Schoodic Education District team with the C staff. Education Districts maintains web resources pertaining to our programs and outdoor classroom activities, both for educators and homeschool parents as well. Education District staff from both the Mount Desert Island District and the Schoodic District maintain this site. The C program, or SEA program, provides in-service teaching experience in environmental education for college seniors and recent graduates. Over the 30 years of residential programs throughout the park, numerous teachers, rangers, and field interpreters have gotten their start as one of our teaching assistants. I'll talk a little more about this later in the program. Acadia's residential programming has its roots in a 6th grade environmental education camping program that began in 1992. The 1992 Natural Resources Camp was developed in partnership with the Appalachian Mountain Club and used their facilities at Echo Lake in Southwest Harbor, Maine. Offering map and compass, forest study plots, dip netting, and water cycle exploration, the Echo Lake Camp ran for 4 to 5 weeks each fall. During the first week of October, it would close down as temperatures began to fall. The early curriculum also included mountain hikes, learning about leave no trace, and a night hike to learn about nocturnal adaptations. The program became known as Acadia Camp in 1999, and this camp operated from the Echo Lake site for a decade. From 1992 to 2002. The cost to schools was $25 per child. As the program grew, the first permanent residential director position was added to the park in 1998. It was a GS9 position. In 2002, we had a lot of big things happening. Acadia inherited the Schoodic Point Navy Base, where the Naval Security Group activity, Winter Harbor, had operated for 67 years. The Navy base would become the campus for a new National Park Service Research Learning Center. Over the summer, staff converted 2 Navy buildings into classroom and dorm space for children, and then piloted the first Schoodic Education Adventure Program after the Echo Lake Camp had closed for the season. The former Navy Chapel, Library, and Continuing Education Center, formerly known as Building 3, began to morph into what is today Elliott Hall, the center of our classrooms. The entire contents of the building were packed up and moved, including pews, fully operational library with petty officer manuals and other Navy instructional materials, and the biggest paper shredder I've ever seen, bigger than your desk. Student classrooms were set up using tables, chairs, and materials available on site. Student computers were provided through grant funding. The former Navy Daycare Center became a temporary dorm. With the help of dozens of volunteers, the former daycare center was turned into a bunkhouse that could house 40. The smallest room held 6, the largest room held 18. That's 18, 9, and 10-year-olds. Later, when the Navy bowling alley was converted to a 71-bed facility in 2010, the temporary dorm space became Dorr Hall, where we currently house a marine touch tank, our water chemistry lab, and art classrooms. The first Schoodic Education Adventure pilot ran with 2 schools, one from Winter Harbor and the other from Northeast Harbor. A basic curriculum was established for this new location, which featured easy access to the intertidal zone, something we hadn't had before, hiking trails, and amazing geological features. Students slept in the temporary dorm, and meals were actually catered by Jeff's Catering for the first 2 years as the nonprofit partner that would eventually become the Schoodic Institute. Did not exist at that time. Tuition was $50 per child for the 3-day program. L.O. Bean supported our first teaching assistants and provided scholarships for students. In 2004, Acadia Partners for Science and Learning was created and began supporting the C program with food services and administrative overhead that would help facilitate the program. This is the nonprofit that would become what is the Schoodic Institute today. Between 2003 today, the C program, our staff, have developed an increasing range of middle school curricula to provide teachers with options that allow them to tailor their students' experience back to their own classrooms, so that they can mesh what they study in Acadia with what they're studying back home. The core program is administered through the National Park Service and the Schoodic Institute, with continued support from a variety of grants: the Friends of Acadia, L.L. Bean, and Down East Audubon. In the early 2000s, the C program began to include citizen science opportunities with its programs. We experimented with formats that at first integrated the Gulf of Maine Institute's vital science projects, hands on the lands lichen surveys, and salamander monitoring through the College of the Atlantic. These opportunities have continued to evolve, and today, C students collect data as citizen science through the Science of the Seasons program from the National Phenology Network. This is a project that tracks the seasonality of ecological events, the change in phenology as our climate warms. Students also assist with a bioinventory of Acadia through an iNaturalist project. And recently, we've added a green crab survey to our program lineup. More about these programs to come. In 2016, we had so many kids coming in the fall, we actually expanded to include a limited spring season. Spring programming has included the traditional residential program on campus, as well as camping pilots, tenting, using the group sites at Schoodic Woods Campground. By this point in time, SEA tuition had risen to $100 per participant. This spring, after a shutdown due to COVID, we're offering 5 weeks of the C program as we open back up. The SEA Rangers have done an amazing job getting ready to work with students as the pandemic continues, moving even more of their programming outdoors. One of the things that makes the C program such a strong fit for schools is because we collaborate with local teachers while creating new programming. Also, about every 5 years, we work with educators to review our existing programming and make sure it's still hitting its intended mark. While all of our programming centers around science literacy and/or citizen science, it's important to point out that the majority of our programming integrates a wide array of subject areas. All of our programs are guided by the next generation science standards and Common Core learning outcomes. A 3-day C program experience for child covers 22 to 24 hours of curriculum content, depending upon the programs that the teacher picks. So we've covered quite a bit about the development of the C program and education history. But what is this program in detail? The overall C program and its operation serves 2 different age ranges of youth, participants, and early experienced teachers, as well as adult in-service teachers. First and foremost, it provides hands-on, feet-in residential education for middle-level students, 5th through 9th grades, not just middle school, but grades on both ends. Our programming focuses on providing students the opportunity to form connections with park resources while developing science literacy and providing them with citizen science experiences. It also provides early career internships and teacher workshops. The C program provides career development opportunities for seniors in college and recent grads through our teaching assistant internships. Many of our young assistants come from parks and recreation and tourism degree programs like UMaine's College of Forest Resources in Orono, Unity College, UMaine Machias, and even Slippery Rock University in Pennsylvania. They all offer similar programs. 20 years ago, these positions provided room and board and a $50 stipend per week. Over time, stipends rose to $100 and then $200 a week. To make the program more competitive and to attract more qualified personnel, the internship now pays minimum wage and provides housing. Let me tell you just a little bit about a few of our former teaching assistants. I've been blessed to work with some amazing people. Over the last 30 years, we've had many teaching assistants come through our program and go on to education or conservation careers. Zach is now an environmental protection specialist at Zion National Park. Pete started out here as a ridge runner, summer steward, became an intern with the SEA program, and then became my assistant ranger, and now teaches geology at a community college in Virginia. Unity College intern Joy is now an education ranger with Washington State Parks and frequently collaborates with us on shared virtual programs. Probably one of the biggest was tide pooling on both the Atlantic coast and Pacific coast on the same day. UMaine Machias intern Justin is now the coordinator for the Piedmont Grassland Bird Initiative with the Smithsonian. Intern Mike, the teacher at Greenpoint in Wisconsin, another environmental education facility, as well as an EMT. Teaching assistant Aaron has become a dispatcher for the National Park Service. Teaching assistant Dawn went on to become a park ranger at Denali. And two-time teaching assistant Danielle has turned into a protection ranger and works search and rescue at Zion National Park. Now, let's get down to the core of what the C program is and its curriculum. We've set the stage, but what is it itself? The C program offers 22 programs for teachers to pick from to tailor their students' experience. The program hangs its programming on a very flexible thematic framework of communicating through mapping and graphing and examining the concept of inventorying and monitoring. The kids are assigned a mission when they first arrive, and that is to determine if we, the National Park Service, are achieving our mission. Is the park meeting its mission of protecting and preserving its natural and cultural resources? What is a resource? How can we know if we're achieving our mission if we don't know what we had to begin with? How can you even begin to tackle inventorying a forest or a shoreline? The students tackle these concepts through a variety of experiences. Each C session begins with a welcome program where the students are introduced to the Organic Act of 1916, which created the National Park Service. Students are asked to define what a resource is and then tour the picnic area, categorizing as many natural and cultural resources as they can find. This exercise leads to a lesson in reading the landscape, where the children build confidence and find that they already know a lot about Maine's forest ecology and shoreline processes. Students are introduced to the history of Fraser Point and start with basic map and compass skills. And they get their first look at a map of the peninsula. One of the C program's biggest assets is our location with easy access to intertidal zone study sites. Each year we have Maine students who come here who have never seen the ocean. Our basic marine investigation program introduces children to tide pooling, to sea creatures and algae identification with the use of a dichotomous key, and the concept of niche space, as well as a demonstration of how tides work. Our marine population study is a bit more in-depth than basic tide pooling. Students lay out a transect and use a water level to measure the depth below mean high tide for each random plot they survey. Estimating the number of species in randomly spaced decimeter squares, they calculate the number of species per square meter for all of their sites. All the math and sampling in this program gives the students opportunity to work as a team to accomplish several tasks. Our marine chemistry program has both outdoor and lab components. Students study the properties of water, review the water cycle, and then model the molecular movement of phase changes of water from ice, liquid to steam. Students learn how to measure water quality, things like pH, salinity, dissolved oxygen, turbidity, nitrates, etc. Students experiment with water density as they try to stack different density layers in a test tube. The soil investigation walk introduces students to the importance of soil, the soil formation process, horizon layers, and the living community of organisms that play an important role in soil health. Students collect data on soils from different habitats and compare their pH, temperature at depth, and percolation rates. They discuss how particle size affects the percolation rate and why that might change between locations. The Forest Inventory Program introduced students to forest ecology and community structure. Students identify the parts of a forest, the ground cover, the understory, the canopy layer, while learning how to estimate the percentage of ground cover and the percentage of canopy cover. Often this program is the student's first experience using a dichotomous key to identify trees by leaf shape, branch pattern, and seed structures. Schoodic contains some of the most accessible geology features in Acadia. Students see and touch real examples of geologic features shaped by shoreline processes, glaciers, and magma intrusions, all within a 1-mile hike. It's fabulous. The residential education program provides time with the kids that you wouldn't normally get in school at night. The night hike provides opportunities for learning about nocturnal adaptations, constellations, and enjoying an evening campfire and camaraderie. A variety of art programs give students a chance to synthesize what they've learned and share it through visual representations, poetry, and journaling. Our landscape change program teaches children to make accurate digital maps while learning about forest succession. Students play games that model forest growth and stages. They then identify examples of lichens, shrubs, and mature trees on the landscape around them and record the GPS coordinates of those samples. They're collecting data to make a forest growth map. The Map Mystery program provides practice using the metric coordinate system that students learn when they're first introduced to GPS units. Students practice finding UTM coordinates as they roll map symbol dice with map symbols on them, and identify each symbol on the map's legend. They then go find that symbol on a map and plot the coordinates of its location, and then they have a teacher check their math. The students are given coordinates later in the program to find a resource issue canister on the map. Each canister contains a letter about a resource issue at that site or resources at that site. The game introduces students to concepts of preserving views, the importance of ocean ecology, endangered species, invasive exotics, wildlife management, preserving cultural history, and more. Our photojournalism program was created by one of our artists in residence. Students review what they've learned during their stay with the C program, pick a habitat to investigate with a camera, and learn to tell stories through the lens. After a photo shoot in the field, students then return to the classroom to write up a photo caption to contribute to their school's copy of the SEA magazine. Another program, our mock archaeological dig, began as a C program. Students excavate the layers of their archaeology pit, big Rubbermaid tub. They measure and map the location of historic replicas found within that tub as they're investigating a larger archaeological site. Students work together to produce a scale map of their site and interpret its contents. An adaptation of this program has been created as a school outreach program, but the C version also operates in the shoulder seasons. We have a phonology program as one of our citizen science programs. On it, students learn about the timing of seasons and how seasonal events can become mismatched if the climate shifts too rapidly, or if creatures cannot adapt in time. Students review their favorite seasonal event, like the budding and blooming of spring wildflowers or the seasonal call of wood frogs and spring peepers. Students then assist in collecting seasonal data for the signs of the season's database, like things like bird sightings, bud burst on maple trees, the signs of insects hatching out. This program has plenty of opportunities for students to continue this activity back at home and at school throughout the year. Students also participate in citizen science programs like the iNaturalist bioinventory. Students use plant and animal keys to identify species, photograph each species, and upload it to iNaturalist bioinventory study of Acadia National Park. This creates a pool of data about local species for scientists to draw from. iNaturalist has a process for identifying and verifying the identified species. Most recently, we've begun programming that offers a green crab, that surveys the green crab population along our shores. And those take place both here at Schoodic and on MDI. In the Schoodic Education Adventures weather program, students learn to use meteorology tools to measure weather data and then put together a weather forecast based on trends. The Schoodic head hike covers leave no trace skills and then combines forest and soil lessons along with elements of the photojournalism program. Then we have a variety of conclusion programs for teachers to pick from to sum up their visit here. The conclusion test quest is a leave no trace geocache program. The program tests the students' skills with tools that they learned about during their stay. Using GPS units, they navigate a physical course set up along our ball field. Each station along the course requires students to use their new skills to collect data and answer questions about the programs they participated in over the last 3 days. Conclusion skits and research presentations are two different programs, and they're programs that give students time to synthesize what they've learned and to create material to share what they've learned with others. These programs also give the students practice in writing for content, graphing, small group cooperation, and public speaking skills. Some teachers choose to have their students make one big comprehensive map at the end of their stay, showing all the locations of their study plots. Another conclusion program option requires the students to pool their knowledge that they've recently developed and to work together to brainstorm solutions or adaptations to climate change issues that are affecting the Maine coast. Over the course of the 20 years the C program has been at Schoodic, over 5,000 students have completed a total of 110,700 hours of hands-on, feet-in environmental education curriculum. Today's students are tomorrow's stewards. May they have a bright future.
Thank you, Kate. That was great. That was
Thank you,
awesome.
Avery.
Appreciate it. We give you a hand, everybody. Yep, you're getting him from the audience. So now is question and answer. So feel free, those of you in the audience, to either go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can post it in the chat if you'd like to do that. For that. Other questions? Oh, Roger, you're on mute. It looked like you were maybe going to ask something.
Well, I'm with the advances that have been made in the virtual programming as a result of COVID. I mean, one of the questions that I've wondered about is there a possibility of C moving to or incorporating some type of a hybrid program where we've got students that are capable of visiting in person, and just like we do with the coast to coast tide pooling, perhaps include classrooms of students in different programs where the students can share what they've learned across a much broader community.
I have thought about that, Roger. I've thought about how neat it would be to have kids down in the tide pools with a camera talking to kids in other parts of the country that can't be here. And maybe someday that'll be part of our programming. I think the biggest impact of residential education is being able to be in the resource. Hands-on, feet in is a term my original supervisor coined in the Park Service a long time ago. And it's one that always resonated for me because it has the biggest impact to kids.
Yeah.
The hybrid, trying to extend that and their excitement to other schools, it's food for thought. Throughout the pandemic, we had a different type of hybrid program. We were completely virtual. And while those programs are really good for bringing information to students and to connecting with them, they pale in comparison with sticking a kid's feet in the ocean or turning over a log and finding a salamander. So trying to strike that balance is something we'll always be thinking about and working on. But those are good ideas. And somebody can get me a signal strength that will reach to the tide pool, we'll try it.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Kate, I'll ask one, and thanks for doing the program, but I'd be curious to hear your take over the course. You've had a long career here at Acadia, and I would be curious your take on sort of the No Child Left Inside, what you've seen in your career with kids and getting them out in nature and sort of changes that you've seen.
Kids are always curious, but I have seen a change through the years. Also as a parent and a grandparent, I want to keep my kids safe, and I'm always educating them about things to be watchful for. But I have kids now who are afraid to even get near the grass for fear of ticks. They have a shorter attention span at times, perhaps due to video games, my own grandson included. I think the need is greater than ever to get kids outside, even for just simple projects at school, and definitely for more in-depth investigation of nature. I think we see a lot of anxiety in kids. And I'm not sure where all of that comes from, but some of it I feel is a disconnection with nature. And you see kids improve while they're here. And of course, they're dealing with homesickness too, so it's a balance, but you see kids become more comfortable when they have time to talk about leave no trace. I'm going to dress appropriately for being out here. I'm going to tuck my pants into my socks if I'm worried about in an area for ticks. They start to get old hat at it by the third day. And they're not worried about fashion statements or anything. They're going about their business. It's a good question, and I think it's one that we need to keep in the forefront of all our program development to maximize the amount of times kids have in the resource.
Thank you.
Nick and then Ken.
I think Ken was first.
Oh, okay, we'll go do Ken then Nick.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Hi, Kate. Thank you for the presentation. That was great. Actually, I don't think I understood just the extent of the programming, and that was really fun. I've had actually students at the college who got their interest in the natural world in the C program.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, they specifically said this is why I'm at the college studying the things I am from the residential program.
Oh,
So at
sweet.
least
Thank you.
that sample was very successful. I guess my question is, because I'm convinced, and this seems like just a program that more students should participate in. And I'm just wondering what the limitations are. Is it staffing or time or the cost of getting kids there or interest? I mean, could you expand it, or what are the things that keep you from, being able to expand the work that you do?
All of the above, and there are people working on those things. Everything from facility size and funding to staffing. And definitely having enough staff. If I could double my staff now, I could double the number of programs I give with our existing facilities. But there's a lot of issues with that. Everybody has a lot of issues with staffing right now. Finding enough staff, definitely finding a place for them to sleep and live. I think you nailed it and named just about every issue that we deal with. The park has a lot to cover, and how much it puts into education and then residential education are all considerations. We have been amazingly fortunate to have the support of Schoodic Institute, Friends of Acadia, and a lot of other support in various ways, whether it's physical support, financial support, and review for our programs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So following up, I guess sort of my questions related to both Ken and Kevin's, and thanks, Kate, for sharing the presentation. I love especially the old photos showing some of the early education work. So Kevin asked really about the kids and sort of where they're coming from as far as their engagement with nature, and you mentioned being afraid of grass and ticks, and I think I'm in that camp for sure. Just wondering about the actual the teaching assistants and maybe how that's changed over time. And you just mentioned that staffing is one of the bottlenecks to expanding C, and we know that hiring is hard right now. So I guess, what are you seeing as far as the evolution of the teaching staff goes, and do you see that as being one of the roadblocks for the future, is finding people actually interested in environmental education?
I think we can find the people that are interested, but we need to provide, and I alluded to it in the slideshow, we need to provide a living wage and a place to live. But we definitely are finding the people who are interested, finding a broader pool of people who are interested so we can select people with the best skills is something we need to work on, both through advertising and continuing to provide housing. To go back a little bit to what Kevin asked, we do find kids who are afraid of nature, or they don't know how to interact with it. And often it's because they haven't had the opportunity. And I'd like to tell two brief short stories about the outcome of opportunities. We've had kids from northern Maine who have never seen the ocean, and they get off the bus at the picnic area and they're calling it a big lake, that big lake, that big lake, for 2 days until we bring them out into it and say, stick your finger in this water. Now taste it. Does that taste like lake water? No, it's the salty ocean. Kids completely awed with the surf, because they've never been on anything that large. Most of our participants are from Maine. But we do have participants that travel a great distance to stay with us for 3 or 4 days. We have children out of New York. In the past, we've had Vermont and quite a few from Massachusetts. We've had some inner city schools that come up. One in particular comes to mind where I was leading a simple tree ID walk on the woodland between my building and yours where you work, and just coming along some of the paved paths and stepping off into the grass. And I had 10 7th grade boys. It was an all boys school. So, and they were cutting up, but we get off into the woods and they get quiet. And one of them drops something and he bends down to pick it up. And he's like, teacher, is this moss? Because it happened to be a section of the lawn that had moss in it. And I'm like, yeah, come look at this tree. I'm talking about trees. And he's like, no, it's just really moss. I'm like, yeah. And another kid's, really? Like, okay, kids, let's get down and touch this moss. They had never seen moss. They'd read about it in books, but they'd never seen moss. And something as little and as everyday as that was an awe-inspiring moment for them. It doesn't take a lot, just residential time with kids to provide some of those opportunities. So we are seeing a difference in kids, but we're also making a difference.
We've got a question here from Tim Watkins.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, thanks. You were talking about anxiety that you see in kids and that's ameliorated by experiences in nature. And I'm just wondering, there's a lot of talk about the reality of climate anxiety in particular, especially among young people, which has connotations for lack of hope about their own future and the state of the planet.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of a different type of anxiety. That's really existential. It extends way beyond the world that they see immediately. It's concerns about places far away that are completely out of their control. And I'm wondering if you are seeing that type of anxiety and if experiences in this place for a few days helps ameliorate that much larger global kind of existential crisis for people.
I think that's an anxiety for us all. And my staff and I grapple with, how do you teach about climate change to children without being a complete and total bummer or worse? We've had long discussions on this. And the children bring it up as well, as you've mentioned. That's why when we're working with kids, we're talking about knowledge is power. And the more we know, the better opportunity we have to combat climate change, to adapt to climate change, and to see a different future. They're the next leaders, and we try to impress upon them how important it is to understand the issues. And then think about adaptations, and they're quite creative.
Well, that's great. I think thank you, Kate. I think we're basically at the top of the hour. So I think we'll go ahead and cut it off there. If anybody has further questions, I think you could probably follow up with Kate directly. And we'll post the recording of this up to the Schoodic Institute YouTube page. So it'll be available for folks that are interested later. But thank you again, Kate. That was a really great history. And yeah, it was super informative. Really appreciate it, and great job building this program. It's really impressive.
Thank you. Putting this slideshow together made me relive a lot of the last 30 years, and I've been incredibly lucky to have a front seat view of so much of the development in the park. I've also just put my email in the chat if you have questions.
Was that you in one of those photos from the 80s?
Yeah, I had black hair then.
I thought so. Tim, I was too. I didn't want to ask in case it wasn't, but I thought so too. That's awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Kate. Really appreciate it. And thank you,
you.
everybody, for coming.
Bye.
Bye.